think we are started, so let's get going. Hello, my name is Rupert Wallace, and I'm a co-director of the MST in creative writing at the University of Cambridge. Very warm welcome to this Ask Me Anything session for the MST. And this session is an informal opportunity to ask for you to ask us your questions about the course, the application process, and the student experience. We've reached an exciting point in the life of the course, which has been running with great success for the last 12 to 13 years. And we've decided that now is the time to reconfigure what we offer and build on the fantastic foundation that we have, developing the MST into different pathways of study, which we'll get to discuss in more detail today. There is also clear information on our website. With me today are my colleagues, Dr. Joe Reed, my fellow co-director of the MST, Dr. Yvonne Battle-Felton, our academic director of creative writing, and our admin colleague, Robert Russo. I'm delighted to say that we also have two alumna with us, Kerry Provenzano and Emma Perfect, and hopefully together we'll all be able to offer a comprehensive view of what it's like to study on our MST. Just have a little bit of housekeeping to get through before we start. I'd like to remind you that this session is being recorded for use on the PACE website and social media channels and will be circulated to all attendees later this week. We'll start with some pre-sourced questions and then we'll move on to some live questions later in the session. If you would like to leave a question, then please do so using the Q&A function that's available to you. Looking through the pre-sourced questions, we seem to have three categories: content of the course, practicalities of taking a course like ours, and the application process. And we'll aim to address each of these categories in order before we go on to the sort of the live questions to come. So without further ado, I think we should get started. I think this hour is going to go quite quickly. The first question we had in our list was, what does the weekly timetable look like? And I think this gives us an opportunity to explain our course very briefly with a couple of slides. And my colleague, Dr. Joe Reed, is going to take us through these. So Joe, can I hand over to you in that respect?
Yes, certainly. So I've just shared a rough slide which gives you a sense of what a week on our course will look like. So our course is run over 3 intensive residentials per year, so 6 residentials total. And you'll come to these residentials and do a series of modules. And you'll choose 3 modules in your genre, and these modules will sit in these time slots that we've built out here: time slot A, B, C, D, E, and F. And you won't do modules in all of them. In fact, you'll choose just 3 modules to sit in those, alongside the core lecture in theory and practice of writing in first year. Finally, you will do a workshop on the Thursday and Friday. So there's some flexibility built into this timetable according to the individual choices of the student. But what does it look like in practice? A sample version of the weekly timetable might look like this. So this student is doing fiction, and they have their core course, theory and practice of writing. All first year students will do that. Alongside that core course, they're also doing a module on the short story. They're doing writing young adult fiction, and they're doing the fractured novel. So they're doing 2 sessions of that per week, and that will recur 3 times throughout the year. They're also doing a workshop on the Friday, and again, that will recur 3 times throughout the year. So you're seeing that we've got about 4 hours of instruction each day. That works out a pretty good load, and we'll be supplementing all of these sessions with optional evening events. So that might be readings, visits from prominent writers, events organised by students themselves, or events for students to socialise among their different groups on the course.
Great, thank you, Joe. And just to clarify, just a sort of higher level, as I said earlier, we are kind of reconfiguring this course. And before we had a purely multidisciplinary approach, we're now going to be taking students in 4 pathways. So that will be fiction, poetry, creative nonfiction, and again, a multidisciplinary approach because we don't want to lose that great approach that we already have current in the course. You'll also notice that in Joe's a couple of tables that we talk about modules, and one of the questions that we had was how much freedom is there in choosing the modules, and is a thesis compulsory? So, Joe, do you have anything you'd like to say about the freedom that students are going to be having or be given in taking in choosing particular modules? We've kind of offering a sort of menu of modules, I believe.
Yeah, so for the first year of implementation for the course, we're looking to run about at least 20 modules from which students can choose their specific genre interest. So let's say you're interested in writing a novel, maybe you want to choose structuring a novel and the fragmented novel or something like that. Those might be courses that would be running. But there's going to be a long list of 20 options, and your pathway, the pathway on which you enter the course, will determine your choices. So if you've entered in fiction, poetry, or creative nonfiction, you'll be expected to do at least two out of your three genre modules for the year in that pathway. But your third choice, you can either choose within your pathway, choose another fiction module or another poetry module, or you can choose to work in a different genre because we want to maintain that sense of students working across genres. In the multidisciplinary pathway, we ask that your three choices contain at least two different genres. So you might do, for example, a module in screenwriting and a module in fiction, and then you have a free choice of whatever you want to do for that third module.
Great, thank you. The next question we had was, what is the ratio of online versus in-person teaching? And I would stress here that all of our teaching is in person, even though it's a part-time course, and you'll be coming to to three residentials through each of the years. It's a very intense teaching period in the weeks, as I'm sure our alumni will attest to in the current version of the course. In a way that although we call it a part-time course, it's as part-time as you want to make it. So there is plenty of reading around the teaching sessions and the teaching weeks that we provide. There's also a chance to interact on the VLE, which is a virtual learning environment with us and with other students. We also, because of the nature of the rhythm of the year, we'll be giving you various readings and things to do between each of the residentials. And I think one of the reasons this course came about in the first place was to try and mirror what it's like for professional writers in their lives. So a lot of writers, they write, obviously, but they also do other things. And I think we wanted to try and get students to understand the rhythm of kind of combining real life with writing. So we're very much, we give you a great opportunity to write between the module, between the residentials that we offer. So no online teaching as such. It's all very much in person, and we will all be there to teach you very, very well. Next question, is there any interaction with tutors in between the termly week of study in Cambridge? If not, what will we be working on at home? Again, a kind of same answer really. You will be writing as much as you want to write between our residentials. There will be assessments to work towards for the end of the year. And these will be graded, and we'll perhaps come on to these a little bit later in terms of what they might involve and how the marks are appraised. I guess if for example, I'm a novelist, so if you were taking the fiction pathway, you've got 2 years where you are actually specialized in fiction, and as well as taking your modules and your core modules, you will have a lot of writing time to perhaps to get through a whole draft of a novel in those 2 years, and that's very much what we are here to support you with.
I should
Sorry,
also
Joe,
add,
go on.
Rupert, there's the workshop at the end of the week is a very
Mm,
important part of the course, and we'll be asking students to submit their pieces for the workshop 3 or 4 weeks before the residential. So you'll be receiving your
mm,
peers' work before that residential, giving you good time to read it, and then provide some feedback to your peers on that, and obviously receiving that in turn from them. So that's going to be an important part of the course, as well as reading in preparation for each of the genre modules on which you'll be enrolled.
mm. Thanks, Joe. Next question. Is writing assessed through English literary styles, or can it include broader cultural literary traditions? I think this is a really important question. Cambridge is renowned for being old, white, stuffy, and male for many centuries, and we've worked very hard to decolonize our curriculum and our reading lists in the time that we've been around. And we have met many diverse speakers who come onto the course, and it's very important to try and kind of show lots of diversity and lots of different cultural traditions within the course. Yvonne, perhaps would you like to kind of speak to that a little bit?
I would say that as a course, you're encouraged to explore and to further develop your voice and literary styles. That could be through reading things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily have, otherwise read, or reading things that you would have, but reading widely is I think it's a strength for every writer and also for the course. So you'll be reading widely, responding to what you read, thinking about the techniques and thinking about the strategies and the storytelling and what works for you as a reader, what connects with you. And then you'll also have an opportunity to try these things out. I cannot stress enough how important I think the workshops are, especially for testing out your ideas and the stories that you want to tell. It's important that you get to know kind of who you're writing for, what you want to write, and why. And I think these are really good opportunities to give that a try.
Thank you. I think I'd also mention probably in answer in relation to this question is that we are a very broad church and we encourage lots of diversity in our applications and in our students. And part of the reason for that is that we want to hear different voices on the course, and the idea of perhaps students who haven't heard these particular voices in the room before is really important and is really refreshing, not only to students but also to us. So we very much encourage diversity and diverse voices, different cultural backgrounds, because that's how we all learn. Absolutely. Um, Next question, and I'm going to hand this over to Emma and Kerry, I think. A key component of many postgraduate degrees is networking and fostering connections for future prospects. How do you ensure that there's adequate opportunity to do this with the majority of the course being online, which obviously we've discussed it's not online. But how did you guys perhaps find sort of fostering opportunities whilst being on the course? And perhaps maybe you could speak a little bit to what's been going on after the course. Kerry, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I would say that in my experience, the course really encouraged kind of building that writing community. I think the workshops were particularly useful because it's a chance to get to understand other people's writing and they understand your writing. And as that develops over time, you not only get to know these people kind of in a friendship capacity, but then you also get to know their work and you get to know the kind of feedback that they give. And I would add to that as well, don't be afraid of really getting stuck in and starting projects or collaborating with other people on the course because you're kind of in this melting pot of new ideas. And it's very exciting. And I would say to stay in touch in between the modules. And also, I think don't panic if you don't feel incredibly close to everyone after one module, because I think it can take time. And I know that for me, it was kind of a slow burn for some of my friendships, and now they're friends for life. And I found that it's invaluable to have that community of writers because now I have people who are around to give me feedback, and we're actually starting a new round of workshopping online with the cohort that graduated earlier on this year. Last year works a bit funny when you actually graduate. Sometimes it can be months after you hand in the dissertation. But yeah, so for me, it feels like it's something that's very long term. And I found that the course itself and the tutors were very encouraging of the writing community and, fostering that and really pursuing it.
Yeah, I don't think I can add a great deal more to that, except to say I thought there was a huge amount of opportunity because we were all together and going through this unique experience. For me, the quality of other people's writing was really great, and I really appreciated that, and I could learn from that. And I think we also kind of learned from each other's mistakes in a weird way. It was just that was just a really positive thing for me. But I would say I'm probably in touch with nearly every member of my cohort in one way or another. So I went and saw somebody's play at the Almeida recently that she was the assistant director on, and I have a friend who's reviewing my writing right now, and I've been and seen someone else in Paris. Like there are great connections. I've given work. I have a small comms agency. I've given work to a couple of the people from the course. I think there are quite good opportunities just within that group, not only to improve your writing.
Thank you. Joe, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to flag up an important thing we do in terms of the very concrete professional networking is our colleague Dr. Nick Bradley runs an agent mentoring program, which is a program in which students are put in touch with an agent to have a meeting and submit a part of their manuscript in a sample query letter. That's the kind of letter you traditionally send to an agent to seek representation. And the agent then meets with the person either online or in person and gives feedback on that. So that's a very useful venue for kind of developing as a writer and getting used to that querying side of things. And also just to flag that the new version of this course, second year, our core course is professional practices. And the aim of that course will be for students to work together to produce projects which are professional, which produce real things, whether that be they work together to produce an anthology, a reading series, maybe they do a teaching project, teaching a certain group for a period of time, or maybe they run an online journal. That will be a chance for students to come out of the course with real world experience and concrete things on their CV and the ability to operate with skills that are very important in the literary world.
Thank you. I think the other thing I would perhaps add as an element to answering that question is that yes, when you're accepted onto the course, you are on the MST in creative writing, but you also do become a member of Cambridge University, and you do that by becoming a member of one of the colleges. And we have a list of the various colleges that you can apply to when applying to the course. And what this does is it opens up a plethora of opportunities within the university. So there might be kind of, directing opportunities or stand-up opportunities or organizing a poetry society or whatever it might be. There are so many things going on at the university. So there's not only an opportunity to network and integrate with the peers in your cohort, but also thousands and thousands of others at the university doing lots of really interesting things. So that's something that we really urge our students to take advantage of once they're being accepted onto the course. Final question in this section. Is this course appropriate for aspiring novelists? I would certainly hope so, and we certainly have a lot of applicants, a lot of students who come onto the course who do go on to get published and aspire to do so. We also have applicants who apply and come onto the course who have already published and are already working as published novelists and as screenwriters. And I think part of the reason for this is that sometimes people like to come back and creatively refresh with us and kind of learn different ways of doing things, perhaps whether it's to do with their writing process or kind of dipping back into something that they've always wanted to pursue that they haven't had the opportunity to do so in their working lives. So absolutely, we're a very sort of fertile ground for all creative writing, and we certainly encourage the ambition within our students to go on and aim for what they want to do as a result of taking this course. Yvonne, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but
No, I think you're 100% right. Students come with a variety of ambitions, and if your ambition is to develop your novel and to become published, there are definitely opportunities to pursue that. We have staff who are actively writing and professional writers and publishing. And so we have different relationships with publishing that we are always happy to share information. You'll have opportunities to find information from one another, be encouraged to research to find like where do you want your book to sit? Who might be the best agent? Who might be the best publishing imprint? And opportunities to do things outside of the university. So I would say it's great that you know what your ambitions might be, and it's also great for us to be able to help you to find it and for you to look at what your path might be and to be on it.
great. Um, a question again, perhaps for Emma and Kerry, this one. Is it possible to have a full-time job while studying this course? Can I live elsewhere in the UK whilst doing it?
Mm.
I think both of you had full-time jobs while you were studying on this course. Is that correct?
I would say I have like a job and a half because I have a business, so kind of I do quite a lot. Um, and I have two children, and I chair the PTA. And the first year that I did this course, I was living in France, so I was coming over on the Eurostar for each module. So yeah, I would say all of those things are doable. You can have a pretty full life and do the course, but you do need to make space for your writing. So I think it's definitely worth really thinking about if you actually have the time, if you can find time in your day. Some people get up early and do it. For me, I was probably sitting there a bit too late at night, crashing things out. But are you someone who's going to be able to hit those deadlines? Because it is more
Mm.
challenging. And I did really envy the slightly younger people that did literally move to Cambridge and just go to the library and stuff because I think that would be delightful and very enriching. But yeah, for me, absolutely, it never felt like a burden to be doing that. It didn't feel like work.
Yeah, I would say the same. It never felt like a burden to me. There was so much joy in doing it, even when we were working to deadline and, cranking the words out. I think this is a course that you don't sign up to unless you really feel passionately about writing and wanting to be a writer. So I also worked full time and just fit it in around that. And I would say, to add to Emma's point about finding time for the writing, it's also about finding time for the reading. And for me, the time in between, not just the modules, but in between starting the first module and also that kind of summer in between the two modules, that was prime time for reading for me. And I think, like with anything, it's about just doing it often. It's not something that you can put away and think, oh, I'm going to go into work mode now. I'll think about my master's, when it comes closer to the next module. It has to be present all the time. But as Emma said, it doesn't feel like a burden, and yeah, it didn't for me.
Mm. Thank you. And can I just ask, as an adjunct to that, do you think you've both carried that through in your kind of writing practice since having left the program? You're still finding space and time for writing as a result of perhaps sort of strengthening that writing muscle?
Definitely more so now, actually. Like I consider the writing to be a larger part of my identity
Mm.
than my work. And before doing the course, I was very much, I work in tech and that's my whole thing. And now I consider myself a writer first and kind of working in tech to keep the
Mm.
lights on.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I'm still doing that. We're still workshopping, and for me, it's kind of a continuation. I'm not going to lie, like I probably did more on the course because I was frightened of not meeting the deadline, so I was probably a bit more disciplined about it. So for me, that structure was actually really good. It kind of forced me to do something. Whereas actually, if you're just trying to do it on your own at home, you can kind of kick the can down the road. Oh well, I'm a bit busy this month, maybe next month. When I was on the course, I really appreciated having the structure to get me to kind of churn stuff out.
And Joe, I know you noticed you mentioned something in the chat. Perhaps you'd just like to chime in about the kind of breadth of students that we have.
Yeah, I was just noting that your question had the original question mentioned to have to be in the UK, and that's by
Mm.
no means the case. So, the nature of these compressed residential weeks means that people can come from all over the world and do come from all over the world. So, we have lots of students from North America, students from Asia, students from Europe. I recall you went and lived in France for a time on the degree, right, Emma? So you're very free to go wherever you need to go outside of those residential weeks when you come to Cambridge to be with your peers.
Great, thank you. I'm going to speed on through questions. I know that we are almost sort of halfway through, and I want to get to the live questions, which I think are going to be open soon. So another question which Emma might like to chime in on, and I'll try and answer my best to start off with. It's about admissions. So if I placed on the reserve list last year, is it more likely to be am I more likely to be accepted second time applying, and how can I make my applications stand out? And I think this is a really interesting one. And I think from a point of view of being an interviewer, I do sometimes see students who I feel are perhaps aren't quite ready to come onto the course for whatever reason. And I do encourage them to reapply. And very often I do see that their writing or whatever it is that perhaps needed improving has improved that sort of next year on, particularly in their writing. And it can be all sorts of things that we kind of discuss, and perhaps then we'd feel that they're not quite ready for the course. And I think going away and doing another year's writing isn't a bad thing to be doing. And I would say there's probably at least two or three students that applies to in each year of the course that I've interviewed on. And Emma, I know you've got experience of that, having
I
reapplied.
can't believe you're outing me in this
I'm not
environment.
outing here.
Like, yeah, so just so you know, people, Rupert does make mistakes. He made a really, really big one. The first year he rejected me, and then he saw the error of his ways. I did find it really, really hard because I really liked the look of the course and I was really excited to do it and I loved my interview and I was really excited. But when I was put on the reserve list, I guess I just took it as okay, I need to get better. And unfortunately, I didn't make it through. I do have some friends from my cohort who did make it through on, from the reserve list. So you can make that shift. But for my year, I didn't. I had to reapply and I had to really think about, okay, what do I need to do to get better? And I just kept practicing my writing and I made sure I had even stronger pieces the next year. And I, also ribbed Rupert a little bit about it in the interview, and obviously he remembered me, so all's well that ends well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting to think about the actual application and all the things that you kind of put into that application packet. There's obviously writing sample relevant to your particular pathway that you're going to be applying in. And I think what I really look out for is the personal statement as well, because I really want to see a kind of different side to a student in terms of what other things they're perhaps doing as well as their writing. Writers are curious and they like to live and do things in the world, which helps kind of fertilize their writing and fertilize their ideas. So I'm always interested in what other things a student might be doing, what else they can bring to their writing. Yvonne and Joe, I don't know whether there's anything else you want to add to that in terms of what you sort of look for in an application in particular.
Can I say?
Yvonne, you
Sorry,
go.
Yvonne, I cut you off there.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I feel like I approach each application with a yes in mind. And then if the answer is no, it's either perhaps it is that the writing just wasn't quite ready or something just wasn't quite yet where I could see, okay, I can see the difference that the program can make for this particular one. I think, Emma, what you said about going away and like if you do reapply, making sure that that writing is further developed, I think that's really important, especially rather than submitting the same thing that was submitted last time. Because if you reapply, at least you can show over this year, this is what I've been doing. These are the ways I've been developing, and you'll also feel, I think, that much stronger about this new application. And then, yeah, hopefully from there, it just gets, better and better, and you're on the course and we can talk about it and we can have a good laugh over Zoom about it later. But, Joe, what were you going to say?
Well, I just wanted to give Emma some hype because I ended up being Emma's supervisor, and she was a wonderful supervisee who was very, very ready to produce the most amazing dissertation. So, the master's course, we're a course for writers, but you're a writer before you join our course, and you're a writer after, as Kerry was saying. So it's not always the case you have to get in this year, otherwise you're not a writer, or vice versa. It's about where it fits in your writing journey. We're here to help you along, and hopefully it's a year when everything feels a little bit easier, and Rupert and I are there with our metaphorical pom-poms cheering you on. But it's not the determinant of your writing life. You'll be a writer before and you'll be a writer after, and we're very much there to just help you through a particularly intense phase of it.
Yeah, I'd second that for sure. I noticed that the Q&A, that the live questions are coming through, so I'm just going to go through a couple more of the sourced questions that we've got. Question asks, I have currently secured a book deal with a novel, congratulations, due to be published in early 2027. Am I able to use a sample of this novel as my writing sample when applying to the course? Absolutely, you can. We'd be very interested to see your writing in that respect, even if it's sort of come through perhaps an editing process. Certainly last year we have a BAFTA-winning screenwriter who submitted one of the scripts that's been made into a movie, and it was really interesting to talk talk to him about perhaps what he didn't get in there. So the writing sample is an opportunity very much for us to kind of talk around the writing and about you and your kind of your reaction to what it is that you've written. And I suppose a project is never really finished, so I'm interested in always discussing that. Can a writing portfolio consist of multiple pieces of writing? If so, would a piece of journalism be appropriate for one piece? I'm not sure what Joe would say about this, but I think preferably not. I think we'd be very much interested in looking at your creative writing rather than sort of a piece of journalism. We do have a lot of journalists who come onto the course, and it can be a difficult transition sometimes going from journalism to sort of creative writing. So for me, I would definitely be looking to see a sample of your creative work to see what it is that we might be able to work with on the course and what you might be bringing to the course. Joe, I think you'd probably agree with that, do you?
Yeah, 100%. It's good to
Yeah.
is if you're coming here to write creative writing, we really want to see you pushing something in that particular genre because
Yeah.
you're going to be doing it for 2 years, so you've got to be serious enough about it to do it for the application as well.
Interesting question. Where do students stay during their residencies? So traditionally, we've been based at Madingley Hall, which is a couple of miles outside the centre of Cambridge. As of 2026, we're going to be based at Newnham College, which is more central. It's opposite the Sidgwick site, which is the sort of large arts site for the universities that contains the English faculty, of which we're a constituent part, as well as the law, history, and all those sort of other faculties. Students will have an opportunity to book a room at Newnham College, but we've decided this time also to give students more options. So there are going to be lots of options actually within Cambridge itself. There should also be an opportunity for you to book a room at your college, depending on which college you're at. Hopefully, most of our colleges will have room availability for the residentials. But there should be a lot of opportunity for accommodation for you to choose from according to your needs once you've been accepted onto the course. Next question, probably the last one. I do not have a bachelor's degree. Does this subtract from the strength of my application? No, this doesn't. And we are happy to consider students who have not sort of perhaps gone through the traditional academic route of an undergraduate degree. We're very much interested in your potential as writers and in your writing sample, and as I say, as in your personal statement as well, and kind of how you're grappling with the world within whatever medium you're writing in. We've traditionally we have taken people who perhaps haven't had an undergraduate degree before. Off the top of my head, I can think of someone who was a professional dancer and went to dance college and had never studied sort of critically at a university. And she was a brilliant writer and ended up with a distinction on the course. So we don't draw any distinctions between people who perhaps have an academic background and those who don't. We're very much interested in your writing and how you perform an interview and how sort of confident you feel about your work. So no, that isn't a barrier at all. I think that's what I'm going to finish there on the pre-source questions and go to some of the live questions that come in. We've got quite a few coming in. I may not be able to answer them all. Joe, this might be one for you, I think. Is there scope for genre writing within the fiction pathway, or is it heavily skewed towards literary fiction?
There is scope for genre writing, definitely. So Yvonne has an interest in horror, for instance. I've written sci-fi speculative fiction. So there's definitely we're accepting of genre writing. I wouldn't say we're a specialist degree in genre writing, but we have had students writing in any number of genres over the course of the degree so far, and that's definitely something we've accommodated. And I think you get a lot from workshops, bringing genre writing to workshops. There's not a kind of literary fiction kind of snobbery going on this course. We read very widely as tutors, and our tutors are published in a number of different genres and areas.
Next question. Are there any restrictions when it comes to being enrolled in the part-time MST, for example? Is it right to be employed full-time or to be attending another part-time academic program? Yes, as we've said before with Emma and Kerry, students do come to be on our program and are also employed full time. We do sometimes have students who are attending or enrolled in another part-time academic program. It's something that we would discuss in interview, depending on what it is that you want to study. I think at the moment we have a student who is perhaps doing a kind of techie style coding AI type degree at the same time as doing a writing degree, and that dovetailed quite nicely with the kind of poetry she was intending to write. So I think we would discuss that in interview and be try want to be assured that perhaps you had time for our program. So no, it's not a barrier, but it's something we would want to discuss with you beforehand, I think. Um, are most applicants already working in the field, i.e., journalists, media, copywriters, editors? No, not at all. We, as I say, we're a very broad church. We have people who work as doctors, psychiatrists. I think we had an astrophysicist. He came on board and ended up writing a poem all in mathematical formulae, which was a bit distracting. So no, I think anyone who is interested in the world and in writing, we welcome. So no, you don't have to have a creative background at all to apply for the course. Um, if someone wants to engage in research narratology in addition to writing, how would they approach that given the way the course is structured? Uh, Joe, do you want to try and engage with that one?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, the course will touch on aspects of narratology. If you want to do independent research in that field, I would say that that might be something to pursue elsewhere because the research that this master's is engaged in is just the writing of creative writing. That's what you're doing. There's one critical commentary style essay on the course that constitutes 15% of the mark, but the rest of the assessment is all creative writing, so your own creative work. So narratology is an important part of thinking about writing, and it might well come into the genre modules. But if you wanted to do original research in that area, that might be something to pursue on a different course or potentially on a PhD, because that's sort of a different slant on things.
Thanks, Joe. How does the course help students develop their writing voice? This is a really interesting question. Partly because I think a lot of people think that perhaps there is a Cambridge voice that we encourage in our students, and that's absolutely not the case. As I said, we encourage students from very diverse backgrounds with lots of different voices, and we try and amplify that voice that you come with. Perhaps we perhaps haven't pointed out that in the second year you are working on your dissertation piece in a one-to-one situation with the supervisor. So if you are happen to be writing fiction, you'll have sort of 5 sessions one-to-one with the supervisor over that second year while studying all your other modules and perhaps doing workshopping as well. So that should allow you to really engage with your work in a very intense way and allow you to develop that voice. It's courses like this are a luxury on the one hand, but on the other hand, they do allow you that time to invest in your writing and in your voice. It's a bit like a bubble sometimes. And I studied on an MFA in the States, and I found it a real immersion into discovering more about my voice and about my writing process and about my craft and everything else, which I wouldn't have perhaps had time to do in the real world where I was kind of living my life. So Yvonne, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about writing voice there.
No, I would, well, I was gonna say no, but I would say, so I guess
Mm,
yes. I think yes, you're right on. It's with you're encouraged to write. And you're encouraged to write while you're here during the modules, but also when you're not here, you would also be writing in response to what you're reading and writing in response to what you're living and writing in response to, what you're curious about. And through all that writing, that's how you develop your voice. When you're workshopping, people are responding to what's on the page and perhaps how it made them feel. And then you respond to the feedback through your writing in the ways that you feel most, makes your work stronger or helps it to further develop. So your voice is developed through you writing and continuing to research. And I think you're encouraged. I know that you're encouraged to keep writing and reading and discovering on the course.
thank you. I'm going to skip through a couple. I'm wondering about the age demographics on your course. I've come to writing later in life, loving it. Would I be sticking out like a sore thumb if successful? No, absolutely not. I think the oldest person we've had on the course to date was 76. I think the youngest has been 21, or maybe perhaps 22. So a huge, huge age range. And again, as I was saying, it makes for a really interesting chemistry in a kind of seminar room. People bring different perspectives and different voices. So no, we're not going to count your old age against you at all, or indeed
Can
your younger age.
can I jump in,
Yes,
Rupert?
Emma.
It's also I didn't expect you to be ageist because that would be illegal and stuff. But I remember feeling that, Julie. Like I really do remember feeling worried about that. And actually, my experience was that there were people there who would like just graduated university at 21, and some of them had retired and were like 70. And that was fantastic and part of the diversity of it and the beauty of the course. And we all got along really well and just had a fantastic student experience together. And I don't think that was in any way a blocker for any of us. So
Mm,
definitely don't worry about that.
yeah. Should the research proposal be a summary of what you hope to write, or should it be a more general exploration of the kind of themes you want to explore? I think a little bit of both, to be quite honest. I mean, I can't remember what the word count is for the research proposal off the top of my head, but obviously we want to know what it is that you want to write in that second year, partly because we want to know whether we might have a supervisor who might fit the kind of thing that you're wanting to write. It's useful to see you grappling thematically or conceptually with the sort of story or idea that you're hoping to execute, and also a little bit of reading, perhaps around the or comparison books that you're kind of thinking of that your project might be similar to. So yeah, I think as full-blooded as you can do within the word count is really interesting. Could you please discuss in more detail what occurs in the workshops? Joe, can I throw that one over to you?
Certainly. So, the first year workshops, that's going to take up the Thursday and Friday of the first year residentials. And you'll be workshopping on each of those days. Um, and we those workshops are going to be 8-person workshops is what we're aiming for. So it's a small workshop group size compared to competitor masters programs, and that the aim is that that will allow each student at each residential to have their work spoken about for an hour by their peers. The word counts and the submissions for word count for workshops will vary according to the genre and perhaps according to the preferences of the workshop leaders and their groups. Typically, in a fiction workshop, I would suggest that people bring up to 5,000 words because that's a kind of good amount to discuss for an hour. So, yeah, you would be workshopping that 5,000 words 3 times a year and also seeing your peers workshopping that material. And yeah, basically the submittee would submit their material. Everyone would read it 3 or 4 weeks in advance and come prepared to speak about the work. And we try and get people to offer reflections on the piece, what is working. I'm very pro praise in my workshops because I think writers succeed on their abilities and their talents most of all, but also to consider ways in which the piece might be refined or changed to be made more effective.
Thanks, Joe. Is it possible to develop a focus on writing for screen or stage later in the program through the multidisciplinary path? Absolutely, that is certainly the case. I would probably be one of the potential supervisors for screen or TV, and it's kind of how the model works at the moment. You kind of go through trying different things and decide what it is that you want to take as a result of taking a multidisciplinary path. If it's screenwriting, that's absolutely fine. We'd also flag up that we have a sister MST as well, writing for performance MST, which perhaps delves a little bit, well, does delve a lot more intensely into writing for screen, stage, and other disciplines as well. So if you are interested in that MST in particular, I might urge you to look at that page on our website as well, just to see whether it might fit your needs more appropriately. Question from Richard, which is quite pertinent, Joe, and I think I'm going to throw this one over to you as well. Can you say a little, please, about the assessed parts of the course, I'd be really interested to understand whether the assessed essays and the dissertation are around the theory of creative writing or pieces of creative writing themselves.
Yeah, this is a great question, Richard. So, a big change in terms of the development of the course has been that we're now pivoting towards the course being much more assessed on creative writing than it has been. It used to have a substantial critical component. There is still a critical essay of 4,500 words, but that's only 15% of the total assessed mark. The rest is made up by a dissertation, which takes up I, I'm it's 40 or 50%, and I'm blanking because I'm saying this in public. But the it's taken up by the dissertation, it's taken up by the genre modules that we've been discussing. So over 2 years, you'll take 6 genre modules, and each of those will have a 1,500 words writing exercise, creative writing exercise that will sit at the end, and that will be assessed. And there is also a small assessment for the professional practices module in which you will reflect on the process of completing the professional practices module.
Great, thank you. So I'm getting hammered by the Q&A and the chat at the same time. I just said that there are a few questions asking about the online part of the course, and so just to confirm that all the teaching does take place face to face in our residencies, our residentials. The one thing I did forget to mention is that you will also be assigned an academic tutor from our teaching staff. So that'll be someone who is a point of contact for you throughout the whole of the first year. You also have a college tutor as well. They're responsible more for the sort of pastoral side of things, but you will have sort of online tutorial sessions with one of us, with one of the academic staff through the year, as a way to touch base and to talk through perhaps how you're managing the course and how you're dealing with things as you learn and go through the modules. So yes, there is a kind of an online touchstone, but largely it's through a tutor. So you'll have a sort of 45-minute one-to-one session, maybe 3, possibly 4 times a year, to supplement, to complement what it is that you're learning face to face. I think there was a question about funding that came up. I'm not sure where it was. I know we have a lot of questions about finance on the course. And I don't know whether, Roberto, whether there's anything that you'd like to speak to about potential funding sources or pathways that students can access.
Thanks, Rupert. Yeah, I've been replying to questions, and I've replied a question about funding. So we don't have any bursaries or scholarship, but so we encourage students to find their own funding resources, basically. What we can suggest is definitely approaching your colleges, because sometimes they offer funding. The colleges that we work with are Lucy Cavendish, Downing College, Wolfson, South Vincent and Moons, and Robinson College. There is opportunity for loans. If you are a student in the UK, you could potentially get a loan from Student Finance England. And we also know of loans that US students can get through Sallie Mae. There is a guide which is called the Alternative Guide to Postgraduate Funding, which is also quite good to find alternative funding resources. And we also, if you have served in the army, there is the LPAS bursary, which is also quite good. We usually if you get admitted into the course, there are going to be installments to pay your fees. Usually it's 8 installments, and you have to pay the first one to get enrolled into the course. In special circumstances, we can agree a special payment plan for you so that you can pay the fees, for example, with more installments, and when it's more convenient for you. So yeah, that's everything, I guess.
Great. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm just reading through all the questions. There's a lot coming in. I'm trying to manage. There's a couple of questions about colleges. Yes, if you have been an undergraduate at Cambridge before, you can go back to your previous college if you so desire, and we have seen that in the past. You can otherwise you can only apply to the colleges that we have on our website. So I think off the top of my head, I can't remember how many it is, 5 or 6 colleges. They're the only ones that link in with our course, unfortunately. So it's not every college within the university. There are certain colleges that we work with, and they're all great colleges. I think we've just brought online Robinson College for the next year, which we're very excited about. Other questions? What does an average course week look like between the residentials? Joe, I'm not sure there's really an answer to that. It depends very much on kind of how invested you are in the course, I suppose, and how much you're doing alongside everything else.
That's true. We should also outline that in the first year between residentials, you will meet online with your tutor over Zoom. And they are your sort of academic touch point for the degree. So you can talk through any academic issues you have. You will also, at the same time, have a college tutor who you can access via email or when you are in Cambridge. But you'll have an arranged meeting between residentials with your tutor, and they will also help you with assignments which you'll be completing as part of the theory and practice module in the first year. In the second year, you'll be working one-to-one with a supervisor on your dissertation, and you'll be arranging those meetings, whether they be in person or online. It's according to your location in relation to your supervisor, etc. You'll be organising those outside of the residential modules. So it'll be up to you and your supervisor to work out when those happen, but you'll probably be spacing them between the residentials in the second year. Other than that, yes, you'll be doing reading towards your courses. So there was a question about reading lists, and each genre module will come with its own reading list. You'll be reading to prepare for those sessions that you'll do in the weeks, and you'll be writing, producing pieces for workshop, reading other pieces for workshop as well.
Great, thank you. A question that often comes up quite a lot, either in interviews or at this kind of stage, is are there internship industry exposure opportunities? And we know that other courses do offer things like that. I think, as Joe mentioned, with our professional practices module, which everyone has to be involved with in the second year, we've hoped to address that by allowing students an opportunity to take on a project that would be important and perhaps workable in the real world creatively, whether that's setting up a journal or running a speaker series and connecting with other writers. We are going to be offering a budget for the projects that students will be taking on and perhaps pitching to us in the first instance. So we are really going to get behind students having real world practical experience in their creative endeavors in the second year. And our hope is that perhaps things will be set up by students in a particular year that might be carried through in subsequent years that other students can take on. So, for example, a journal, whether set up in any discipline or whatever. So we are very much trying to address this, which is something which hasn't been available on the course before. I think the other thing I would say is it's very much up to you as students to try and get involved in as many things as you can, perhaps that complement the course or within going on within the university. Emma and Kerry, I don't know whether you felt that was when you were kind of taking the course, whether there was an opportunity to get involved in the kind of industry side of things. And, because ultimately not everyone's going to go on to become a writer or take a PhD. And I guess applicants are kind of concerned about what real world practical experience this course might have, beyond the MST. So I don't know whether, perhaps Kerry, you're sort of nodding your head, whether there's anything you'd like to speak to about that.
Yeah, I actually found that even just from having going to the panel talks and seeing the people that kind of came in and delivered lectures, it was broad. The disciplines they worked in were varied, and I kind of followed all these people online, joined their email newsletters, kept up to date with them. And I feel like it just kind of cracked open my social world to like all these different writers and opportunities. And there's definitely been things that, editors have posted. One of the editors that came in had shared something that she was looking for a writer for a project, which I kind of spoke to her a little bit about. So yeah, I definitely felt as though it opened that door for me. And I know that Joe mentioned as well about Nick's mentor scheme with an agent, and that was incredibly useful. So I think for me, though I was a writer before in kind of like a journalistic capacity, I didn't have any connections in the world of creative writing until doing the course. And then I felt like I came away with quite a few.
Yeah, I think for me, an internship was probably something I felt able to arrange for myself. So I didn't necessarily see that as a selling point of other courses. But I think that's definitely something that, yeah, from what Kerry said, yes, we did get exposure to a range of incredibly interesting people. I remember, the former head of radio at the BBC came and spoke to us one time. We had George Saunders spoke to us one time by video. Like, we had an incredible array of speakers that we were very, very lucky to hear from. And sometimes those people would stay for lunch and you would chat with them or whatever. That was really good. Definitely one of the ways that the course is being developed and being made even better is that they are adding much more kind of practical industry stuff into it now. So, I think that the opportunities Joe's already spoken about in terms of things like making your journal or Nick's agency workshops are going to really add value as well.
Great, thank you, Emma. I'm aware that we're almost out of time. I'm just going to skim through the question, trying to find sort of groups of questions. There's one that's coming up about consistently about the kind of time pressures outside of the residentials and the reading. I think in each module that you take, there will be you will be set some reading that will perhaps carry through to the next part of the module in the next residential that you're going to be attending. The residentials are kind of spaced out. I think we have our first one will be in September. The next one will be following that will be in January, and the one after that will be in April. So there's a reasonable amount of time between each residential to get to grips both with your writing, with the reading that we give you, perhaps thinking about other things that you want to be doing, whether it might be an internship or whatever, as well as getting on with life as well. I think also your writing, if you want to be writing perhaps more than you're intending to write specifically for the assessments that we set you at the end of the year. So I think hopefully there's a balance that we've achieved between giving you enough work, obviously, to stimulate you and make you curious and to help amplify your writing, but also to choose to do other things and not feel overwhelmed by that. And again, that's something that your tutor will be able to help you with through the year. Joe, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that in terms of the workload through the year. It seems to be something that's coming up quite a lot.
Yes, well, so I suppose one aspect of the course, our particular course, is that the nature of the residentials means you have this period of activity, and then you have a period where you're managing your own work a little bit more. A typical so our degree has been designed just like any other master's degree. We have roughly the same contact hours and the same hours devoted to the degree in general. So the expectation for a part-time degree is you're working on that degree for 17 and a half hours a week. What that actually means in practice can change around. Maybe you're working intensively for 1 week and then you're doing a little bit less because you have other responsibilities. Or maybe you're keeping it very, very steady throughout the year. And I think Kerry and Emma have just spoken about approaching that in slightly different ways. So yes, I think a lot of the time in interviews when we speak to students before joining the course, they feel very worried that they're not going to have enough to do between residentials. But once the course has become, they're on the course and everything is concrete and they have sessions coming up, they soon begin to find that, they have an order of, I have to read this book before the upcoming session, this book, I have to get this piece of writing done. And things start to slot into place. It starts to feel like, okay, there's a set of stepping stones linking to the next residential. There is, of course, a degree of kind of self-management of your time in this, but I would actually say it's a real benefit of the degree because it's allowed, say, Kerry and Emma here to both have managed very, very stressful working lives around the prerogatives of the course. And I know that for both of you, that's taken sometimes working very intensively on a course and sometimes putting things on the back burner.
A couple of questions about transcripts and references. I think it can be hard to get hold of academic transcripts. I suppose perhaps if you've left academia a while ago, but we are certainly the admin team are there to help you with that and guiding you with that. In terms of references, no, it doesn't have to be specifically a creative writing reference. We just want someone who knows you and can give an honest appraisal of you. And again, all these sort of ingredients go towards building a picture of you around your writing. So no, it doesn't have to be specifically to do with creative writing. We also, Joe, just going back to the question about the workload, we keep getting a question about sort of numbers of required reading books. That's going to vary vastly between the different modules, I assume. I don't know whether you could speak to that, say in your fiction module that you might be hoping to teach next year, what the sort of book load might be that you would set.
Yeah, so for my fiction module, say the course and the novel, I would expect participants in that to have read a couple of novels before each residential. So that's one of your three genre modules. So that would be two novels before each residential. I'm not going to specify Anna Karenina or 2666 or anything that's going to be incredibly heavy and hard to get through. But yeah, so you could be reading, let's say, 6 books before each residential, but that could go down in some cases. Some courses might just be a poetry collection, or perhaps there's different excerpts from different things. So it will vary, but there'll be enough reading lists to get your teeth into, and also it's a very valuable tool to be kind of preparing for these classes and coming in well equipped to discuss them with your peers, because our classes are all about not just about us standing at the front and talking to you, but it's about you talking to us and bringing your own perspectives into the classroom. So having everyone have considered the same material before the class begins is really important.
It's gone 6 o'clock, and I'm aware that we haven't got round to all the questions. We are more than happy to answer any questions via email that come in. So if we haven't got round to answering your question, please do submit your question, and we will do our best to answer it via email or by other means. I'd like to say thank you so much for attending this session. I hope it's been useful. Do remember that it's being recorded and will be circulated later this week. Please also remember that our deadline is the 15th of January for our applications. If you do have any further questions, please get in contact with the enrolment team at enquiries@pace.cam.ac.uk. As I say, they can be passed on to myself, Joe, or Yvonne, or someone else. Please do refer to our website for info on the course. So hopefully, I think some of the questions can be answered if you look at the web page. There's an additional course trailer on there and some bite-sized lecture videos telling you more about our postgraduate course content in general. I also want to mention that we are holding an event on December the 11th at Newnham College, where we will have 3 of our published alumni reading and talking about their experiences on the MST, and many of our tutors will be there to speak to anyone who wants to know more about the course as well. I think details for registering for the event have gone into the chat somewhere. If not, you can find details for attending the event in the bio of our Instagram page, which is at Cambridge_CCW. And it remains for me to just say thank you so much for attending. We've really enjoyed it, and we really enjoyed receiving all your questions. And it's always lovely to hear kind of from people out in the ether. And we really hope to see you studying with us soon, and obviously reading our applications before then. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you.